Pravali, once you admit the participants, give me 30 seconds to start the Facebook Live and then welcome folks. Or not even 30, 20 seconds.
Okay, all right. I see that quickly, I think everyone's beginning to sign up now. So maybe we'll wait for a couple of minutes more before we let them all in.
Sure. I see. Hi, Marley. It's Andrew Potts. I enjoyed your remarks this morning, taped.
Oh, hi, thank you.
I met some of your colleagues from Cayman Islands 2 years ago in Madrid at COP25.
Who'd you meet?
Oh my gosh, you would ask me that. There was a whole group. I think 3.
I think it was like Steph McDermott. Was it? Does that ring any bells?
Yeah, two women and two girls and a guy. It'll come to me if I think about it. Oh.
Yeah, no, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, it was cool that they got to go.
Yeah, I think it was the first time people from Cayman got to go.
Pravali, I think you should just go ahead and let people
let
in.
Everyone in, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and if more people join, they can just join.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all those who are joining us from different parts of the world. Welcome to the second session of the Climate Heritage Narrative Series that is being organized by the Climate Heritage Network as part of pre-COP 26 events, which is being hosted by Italy this year. We're also very grateful to the Italian Ministry of Culture, who worked closely with us to realize this event. We'll perhaps wait for a minute or two before we begin the session. In the meantime, I would just perhaps in the chat, we'd like to know where everyone's joining from, just so we have an idea of which parts of the world we're speaking with this evening. Oh, it's so nice to see that we've participants all the way from the East. It's 2 a.m. in Sydney. Well done. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We have participants coming in from India, Indonesia. New York, I imagine, is is at a much better time right now. Andrew, we're all right here in Europe. Okay, a couple of people also from New York. Well, I think we can go ahead and start the conversation for the evening, and we'll see as other people join in as well. So to those of you who have just joined us, as I was saying earlier, this is the second session on the first theme of the Climate Heritage Narrative Series, which is a youth-led intergenerational dialogue. Through this series, it's our aim at the Climate Heritage Network that we highlight how youth-led care for culture can lead to better climate action. And as today also marks the UN Day for World International Tourism Day, we thought that it would just be the most appropriate thing to start with. So today's discussion is going to be centered around sustainable heritage tourism and its link to climate change, and how we'd like to talk about different success stories from across the globe where youth-led action has caused some tangible change. Just to give everyone a brief overview of today's session, we're going to have, in the first part of the session, we're going to have a keynote from a young professional, which will be followed by a cafe roundtable of intergenerational expertise. And it's been our effort to try and match different levels of expertise, different age groups, different geographies, to get as many different perspectives on the field as possible. And this part of our session, the keynote as well as the roundtable, these are pre-recorded videos that will be played. As you may know, also from the 2 time slots that we've created this event around, it's been our hope to have as many people from as many diverse localities as possible. So some of our speakers have also been kind enough to join us today in the evening session. So it'll be a great opportunity for you to discuss with them directly and ask them whatever questions you have. But once this cafe roundtable is done, we will also have a live component. We will have about 30 minutes to get into different breakout rooms and have a discussion around any of the presentations that we will see today, or any other experience that you might want to share, which is relevant to climate heritage action. We've had some very interesting discussions in the morning, some very personal experiences from the participants as well. And it's our hope that we keep, that momentum on. And it's also the aim of this session that we might be able to take your feedback and your recommendations and feed it into a set of youth recommendations for any policy documents that would be prepared in this field. So I'd perhaps give the floor to my colleague Louise Kelly. She's from Historic Environment Scotland, and she's one of the co-conveners for this project as well. And Louise is going to take us through the various speaker keynote sessions and the roundtable conversations. Louise, would you like to go ahead and say hello to everybody before I introduce our keynote speaker?
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. Well, it's this evening here in Scotland, but I know it's morning, afternoon, night, wherever you all are. Thanks for that introduction, Pravali. And as Pravali said, we have recordings for all the speakers today, but we do have 2 of our speakers here live. Pravali, I don't know if you'll touch on that as you're introducing them, but I would just say, even though the people aren't here, if you have any thoughts while you're watching the videos, do pop them in the chat, and then we can kind of use that as a springboard for discussion after when we come to the discussion portion. So I'm going to go ahead and line up the first speaker. Pravali, if you want to do a quick intro while I do that.
Right, perfect. And yes, Louise, thank you for mentioning this. As Louise said, some of the speakers were able to join us for the morning session. And for those of you who are not, we already have a few questions lined up. Peter, I'm looking at you as I'm saying this, but I hope that we'll have the chance to get to those questions during the live discussion. Well, without further ado, I guess we can head on to our keynote speaker for the day. We have Marion from Rampart, which is a French organization based in Paris. And this is an organization that works heavily towards volunteering for heritage. And it's also the central discussion of Marion's keynote today. She talks about slow tourism and how community engagement is a big part of going towards a sustainable tourism aspect towards heritage sites. Luis, maybe you go ahead and start with Marion's keynote.
Hello, I'm Marianne Floirec from Union Rempart in Paris, France, and I am in charge of international exchange development and visibility. I will talk to you about how volunteering for heritage is a responsible way to travel and to discover new places at the same time. Volunteering for heritage is a commitment to preserve a historical site along a local association, but it is also a way to learn traditional know-hows, to meet new people, and to travel in a way that will impact less your environment. And this is what we've been promoting at Rempart since its creation in 1966. So for 55 years this year, actually. And Union Rempart is gathering almost 180 associations everywhere in France. It groups also together partners around the world. And each of these associations are preserving and bringing back to life one or more heritage sites. Their activities is to bringing them to life, to welcome visitors, but also to organize volunteer action that anyone can join. And these working holidays are open to everyone who wishes to engage in a voluntary approach of heritage, but also who wants to spend holidays in a highly historical place. And thanks to that, we welcome thousands of volunteers each year on our sites. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of our numbers and of what is an historical heritage holiday. And here you have our map of the working holidays we've set up in France in 2021. It's not all of our associations, but many of them. And it can, yes, give you a picture of where you can travel to learn about the story of a place, but also knowledge and travel in a region that you've been wanted to know more about in France, at least here. And participating in a Rempart action, it's so an implication for heritage, but also for climate. To give you an hint of what Rempart has been committed to for their environment since its creation, we can see in the foundation charter that Rempart had already underlined the importance of respecting the environment of the site, that the sites, the heritage sites, is completely linked to its wider environment. And we can see it on the picture here, that if you are taking care of a water mill, then you will have to think with the river, where you have to think with the floodings and the heavy rain and how it will impact the environment. So ever since its creation, Rempart and its association have been thinking about the environment and as the heritage site as part of a global environment. In 2014, we decided to write a more specific charter about climate, and this charter stressed out how the activities must be as sustainable as possible, that hosting the volunteers should always be done respectfully of the biodiversity of the site and of the environment. So basically, it was something that was already set up in many places, but that we wanted to write down. And in 2020, we created, after our General Assembly, a working group on climate. this working group on climate had to accentuate our commitment for climate. It made an assessment of how our member sites, our member association are impacted by climate change. On one hand, we focused on how the sites, we can see here in Ireland, but also in the mountains, how they are impacted by the changes of the climate. How do they deal with the fires that happen more and more often? How do they deal with heavy rains, for instance? And also, how does this climate change impact their activities on site and the working holidays that they organize? For instance, in southern France, we cannot, in some places, organize working holidays during the summer months because it would be too risky because of the fire. So it's only in September. And on some other places, we can see that the period where it's really, really hot are more and more common. So the volunteers work from 7 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon, and then they have their afternoon free because it's impossible to work in the afternoon anyway. So they had to adapt, and we could see this while gathering all this information and making this little inventory of how our member associations are impacted by climate change. And while we were asking them about how they were impacted, we also asked them about their good practices. What do they do to mitigate our impact on climate? We gathered all this information in this white paper that you see here. And it's basically a good practice handbook that we aim to share with all our member associations, but also to the general public. And what we've seen also in these guidelines are that many associations in Rabat are already implementing things to mitigate their impact, and that all of them are aware of the importance of acting for climate. So we can see that in our network, there is a really strong will to act and to act ever more for climate. This white paper gathers so good practices, and we want our association to continue acting. But when we continue to ask them, for instance, last week I was visiting an association in Northeast France, and we saw that they didn't give us their story for this white paper, but they still had some new ideas that we didn't put in the white papers. So it's just, as you can see, there is a date here because we know that it's going to be getting better and better, and that there is more and more initiatives that we can see. So yeah, that was one of the aim of this white paper, to motivate our members to be more involved, to be more committed to climate action, and to offer our volunteers something that would be really more green and not some greenwashing, to be really responsible on site. We have some future initiative, but we also wanted to foster dialogue within our network, but also to the general public, to talk with some other experts about it and see how we can better our impact on climate and reduce what do we do at the moment. We focus for this white paper, we focused on all the working holidays impacts that can be transportation, consumption, and grocery shopping. How do we manage water on the heritage site while welcoming the volunteers? So we had all these 8 topics, and they were included obviously in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And to give you an idea of the action that we offer, we share in these 8 topics, we can see that for transport that we share with our association, the idea with all of our association actually since years to offer the volunteers to come by train, and then we pick them up at the station so they don't have to come by car. But if they do come by car, we also offer them the opportunity to share with other volunteers the opportunity to have their contact so they can do carpooling. We have also many associations who are working with local farmers and that even sometimes are locally growing food within the heritage site, so they can already cook for the volunteers with what do they have on site. It's very wide and complete. You can see here some of the practices that we've set up. So picking up vegetables also in some fields next to the heritage site, so the volunteer can directly go pick up their dessert in the field. Some of our association also have animals to take care of the grass during the winter season, for instance, the wood that is locally produced, and we have the stories of many of our association on each topic. We have a story, and when we call other association, we also know more of these stories, and it's really interesting to see how creative are the association to reduce the impact when they welcome volunteers. And here, this testimony here is about an association in the center east of France, where they actually borrow bikes from the municipality office of sports during the summer when they don't need it. And so instead of discovering the countryside next to the heritage site, they go with the bike instead of renting a van, for instance. So what we are talking about here is tourism, is about discovering a new country, a new way of living, a new heritage site that we didn't know about. And it involves the community, it involves everything in the region. We can see through the eyes of the people we are meeting, we are exchanging with a new region completely. It's not only passing by. So for sure, it is what we call slow tourism. We take our time to visit a place, but it's even if it's far away from very well-known and crowded places, we can always pass by them and visit them quite fast when passing by, going on the site. But when doing this mass tourism experience, you will never get the chance to meet locals, to hear the story about the heritage site itself and about the region that goes with. You will not have the chance, as you do on the heritage sites, to taste the better locally made dish and also to learn how to cook it. So it's an experience. It's not only about tourism and visiting places. It's about learning about you, about others, about the region you're in. And for us, it's really important that we can do it in respecting the climate and respecting the environment, because it's sustainable. It has to be sustainable. Heritage restoration is a long-term process, and we have to deal with climate change. These sites have been here for longer than many contemporary buildings, and we have to respect them, but their environment as well. So what I wanted to say here was that volunteering for heritage is committing for something at the personal level, but also committing at the global level for heritage and for climate, because these actions are indeed respectful of the environment and the biodiversity. Thank you very much. If you have any question, don't hesitate. And also, I could share the white papers for anyone who needs.
All right. Mahio couldn't be with us here today for the evening session, but she was there during the morning session, and we had some wonderful discussions. I know of her personally because Rampart has also been one of the founding organizations that worked as part of UNESCO's World Heritage Volunteers Initiative, which has been running for the last 12 years, also building on what these local grassroots-based organizations are doing. But for everyone here, Mario shared with us the link to the white paper that she was referring to in her presentation. So I'm going to share it in the chat. From what I know, it's currently only available in the French version, but they're trying to translate it to the English one. So if anybody has any questions for her, she's also left us her email address, and I'm adding both of them in the chat right now. And that should be good. All right, so moving on from this very inspired keynote about slow tourism and about giving back to the community as we also engage in heritage tourism, we now want to travel across continents to go to Asia. And to start off our cafe roundtable today, we have Priyanka Panjwani from India, who's a conservation architect and a coordinator for the ICOMOS India National Scientific Committee on Risk Preparedness, and she's also an associate member of ICOMOS ISC Energy Sustainability and Climate Change team. I believe that Priyanka is with us here today. I know it's quite late for you, Priyanka, so thank you for joining us. From there, we go and we meet Marley Smith, who's also there for the evening session. Hello, Marley. She's a heritage studies student who's currently pursuing her course in the Cayman Islands, and she's a very interesting project that she wants to talk to us about. Then coming back to Asia, we're going to talk to Shrishtina Shrestha, who's also a conservation architect and a coordinator for the Lumanti Supporting Group and Shelter, which works on heritage revival projects and recovery plans in the Kathmandu Valley in Nepal. I'm not sure Shrishtina was able to join us for the evening session, but she was there in the morning. So if anybody has any questions for her moving forward, do feel free to leave them for us in the chat. And then, as we said, this entire series is, of course, aimed to be youth-led, and it's about sharing the success stories of the youth, but it's also about celebrating an intergenerational dialogue. It's also about, having a lateral exchange from those who've been there for longer, who've had the expertise in the field, and who have personal stories to share. And so to bring in that intergenerational element, we also have with us today Peter De Bruyne, who is, a former colleague of mine, a current colleague of mine as well, actually. Hi, Peter. He's been coordinating the UNESCO Sustainable Tourism Program for the past decade, and Peter has, inputs on anything related to heritage tourism that one could think of. So really make use of the fact that he's here today and ask him as many questions as you want. But with that, I'm going to pass the floor back to Louise, and I think Louise will go on with the Cafe Roundtable screening. Louise, over to you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Namaste and greetings from India. I am honored to present today at the 2021 Pre-COP Climate Heritage Narratives under the theme of Sustainable Heritage Tourism. Today, I will be exploring native areas in an urban context with the case of metropolitan Mumbai in India. My focus today will be the indigenous people of Mumbai, tourism initiatives in indigenous settlements, and I will present a short tour in a forest area of Mumbai. My name is Priyanka Panjwani and I am a conservation architect and an emerging professional from Mumbai. Before the 7 islands of Bombay transformed into the rapidly urbanizing city of today, the islands were occupied by the original settlers of the region. The city is peninsular and has a green oasis in the form of a unique national park at its heart, and more than 40% of its population is migrant today. The indigenous people of Mumbai are an integral part of the city's rich heritage and culture. They live in harmony with the environment, and their lands are living heritage sites. Their beliefs, traditions, and their lifestyle are intertwined with nature, which makes them inherently resilient. Here are some examples of native people, including the Adivasis or the forest tribes, the Kolis or the fishermen, the Agris or the cultivators and laborers, and ethnic groups such as the East Indians. Please note the icons used for each. This is an indicative map of Mumbai showing the location of some indigenous settlements. The Kolis or the fishermen were settled on the coastal areas, the Agris on the plains, the Adivasis in the forest region, and there are a few distinct villages where the East Indians reside in Bombay today. Some of the native settlements that thrive even today are marked on the map. They generate a lot of curiosity and interest among the local as well as the global tourists. In the past decade or so, conscious organizations have begun to promote tourism in a sustainable way. These tours include visiting the native clusters, meeting and engaging with the local people, and participating in activities such as sketching, exploring the wild, learning about the trees and water bodies, and even some homestay options. I had the opportunity to be a part of a day tour in the RA forest recently. RA is located in the southwestern edge of the Sanjay Gandhi National Park, and this event was promoted virtually as a breakfast and biocraft tour and was conducted by college students working at the Naturalist Foundation, and along with them Manisha Dhinde, a Warli Adivasi from the Maroshi Pada in RA, conducted this tour. Through my first-hand experience, I believe that this tour advocates the intent of at least 8 UN Sustainable Development Goals. The tour was designed to guide a small group through an oral medium. About 60% of the participation fee was shared with the tribal community, and some amount kept aside to carry out forest restoration. The tour promotes the goal for sustainable cities through small but impactful ideas such as vehicle sharing even before the trail began. We encountered partnerships at many levels and were encouraged to be considerate to the clean and tranquil surroundings and the residing people. Sharing a tribal breakfast from bamboo and village-grown vegetables promotes responsible consumption and production. We enjoyed food as well as stories together, a good example of the goal for good health and well-being. Our native guide Manisha is seen here steering the conversation. Manisha also showed us how to work with leaves and flowers, and we felt enriched with knowledge and some art skills. She also helped us decode and paint traditional Warli art. Hence, the ecotourism initiative at RA is a win-win for both the natives as well as the participating tourists. What the indigenous people get is the exposure to opportunities for sharing their knowledge and earn an extra income, build partnerships, and more importantly, save nature, which is their home. The tourists get a chance to be inside a forest in a city environment and learn new skills, try out new cuisines, like Marion said in a previous presentation, and above all, get the satisfaction of contributing to a good cause. This activity also helps the youth volunteers to adopt responsibility. It empowers them by providing them an extra income, and they in turn help to expose the threats to the communities and monitor the vulnerability of the sites. The native communities are at the forefront and most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. They face several other challenges such as rights to land ownership and new infrastructure forcing displacement. Developing sensitive and inclusive tourism opportunities with the historic communities will help the natives recover from financial losses due to the pandemic and will be an essential step in climate action. A happy World Tourism Day to everyone. Thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to your comments and questions. Take care.
If you just bear with me a second, I'm just going to share the next video. Oh, sorry about that. That was a technical thing. Just, yeah, give me a second.
Well, in the meantime, if anyone has questions for either Marion or for Priyanka, please feel free to leave them in the chat. Priyanka, it's funny that you should present this case study from Mumbai. You know, it's also my hometown. I was born there and raised there for 20 years of my life, and I never knew that, you know, this entire bustling community existed there. So yeah, I think during the discussion phase today, I'm looking forward to asking you many, many questions about this tribe of people that you've been working with.
Surely, sure. Pravali, thank you. In fact, I did not know much about them before this tour. So this was a good experience to interact with the community directly. And yeah, I think we can start the next one.
Hi, I'm Marley Smith, and I'm an environmentalist and a student right now, and I'll be talking about the Cayman Islands and how ecotourism and green recovery is a great way to spread the heritage and protect the environment in Cayman. So I lived in the Cayman Islands for 10 years, and I've been able to experience firsthand the effects of overtourism and overdevelopment on our island. With the key principles of environmental conservation at the forefront of my mind, I was shocked to see the pounds of trash that were on the beach and the thousands of new construction sites each year. How could such a small island not appreciate its own beauty? And throughout the entire world, we've seen an increase in overtourism and overdevelopment. There's been a 56-fold increase in tourism, with a shocking 1.4 billion international arrivals each year worldwide. So tourism and finance are the main industries in Cayman, and they account for 50 to 60% of the country's GDP. Tourism brings in many job opportunities and business opportunities and allows millions of dollars to come into Cayman each year. While this increase in tourism has proved beneficial economically, it's been detrimental to our environment. And so we need to find a balance between protecting the economic well-being of our island whilst also preserving its natural beauty. So in my eyes, ecotourism is the answer. Ecotourism is a sustainable way of travel that doesn't harm the environment. And as we heard from Priyanka's presentation, it promotes the conservation of the environment, the education of others about preservation, and it can also allow monetary gain to the local people. Here in Cayman, we have mangrove kayak tours where you can learn about how mangroves protect the coastal lines and how they're habitat to juvenile fish. We also have amazing coral reefs, which you can dive and observe without harming them, and learn about the zooxanthellae and the importance of coral reefs for our Earth. We also house one of the last great reproductive grouper populations. So every year there's a virtual spawning event, which you can watch online, which is amazing. However, on top of ecotourism, we also need to help mitigate the effects of climate change caused by the inescapable negative impacts that travel and tourism has on our island and on our world. So to do this, in my eyes, green recovery is essential. So last year, during our country's lockdown, me and a couple other peers started Cayman's very first tree planting project as a part of the Caribbean Tree Planting Project, which is a pledge to plant project aimed to plant 1 million trees in 1 year, which is also part of the UN's goal to plant 1 trillion trees. So we first started with doing an online social media campaign, as we couldn't really do anything because of COVID, but it proved a great outreach program, and we got individuals and families to start thinking about why it was important to start planting trees. And after our country's restrictions started lifting, we were able to have meetings with different schools, businesses, and even our government about having tree planting events to help educate the public and also get some more green recovery in Cayman. So we were able across the year to plant 500 trees, and I know it sounds like a small amount, but we're a tiny island, only 100 square miles. So 80 of those trees that we did save were from a construction or a future construction site after the owner reached out to us, and we got 20 plus volunteers to come help dig out these trees. And with the help of a botanist, we were able to recover red birch trees, mahogany trees, broadleaf trees, and silver thatch trees. What's the importance of this? Well, each of these trees has a special importance in Caymanian heritage and Caymanian history. So red birch trees, famously known as the tourist tree because they're always red and peeling, were used to make crates, matches, fences, and traditional Caymanians today still boil the bark to make a backache cure because of its antioxidant properties. And we have mahogany trees, which are protect us from the elements and are great for making fences as well. And broadleaf trees were traditionally used to shine turtle shells, because we used to sell a lot of turtle shells, because it has a sandpaper-like leaf. And silver thatch trees, finally, our national tree, which are sadly endangered, were used to make so much rope because of its durability and salt tolerance, and that used to be one of our main industries in Cayman. So in the early 1900s, we exported 2,000 miles of rope to Cuba and Jamaica. And silver thatch trees are also used to make the traditional Caymanian shoe called a whopper. So as you can see, green recovery and ecotourism isn't just about protecting the environment. Of course, that's important, but it's also about protecting the heritage of a country. Each separate flora and fauna of a country has its own story, its own importance, and its just own special part in a community. So I believe it's important that we work together with the tourism industry to try and have tourists come to appreciate the beauty and heritage of the country they're visiting, instead of expecting a concrete jungle just filled of pollution. So it's important that we work with the tourism industries to protect the natural environment, prevent overdevelopment, and protect the heritage of each individual country. Thank you.
Okay, ready now.
Greeting to everyone. This is Christina Shrestha from Nepal. Today I'm going to present on Haiti's recovery plan. This project was initiated after 2015 earthquake in Nepal to support a municipality to develop sustainable tourism plan and green growth plan For this, I am taking a case of Kirtipur. Nepal lies in Southeast Asia. It is a Himalayan country where uh, trekking tourism and heritage tourism is one of the main income source. Kathmandu is the capital city of Nepal, which lies in the center of country, where we have almost 52 different traditional settlement. In this project, we are focusing in the southern and western part of Kathmandu, where Kirtipur lies in the western side. It is a historical hill town which has been enlisted in tentative World Heritage Site in 2007. Zooming into the Kirtipur, it was isolated traditional settlement till 1990s, which was surrounded by green agricultural field, and the main occupation of the people was also agriculture. But gradually, due to the haphazard urbanization, the whole agriculture field was occupied by a concrete jungle. It was a scene till 90s, which has been changed in this way. After the earthquake, many private houses has been changed its fabric. Talking about the settlement, it was a fortified settlement which has almost 13 entry gate, but now only 8 are remaining and other has already disappeared. In this way, many heritage elements are disappearing from this historic town. For this project, we started sitting with the community in their place to understand the local context, how the people feel about that place, their stories, and their myth, and how they see their own settlement, so that we can build a very good bond with the community. After that, we sit with the different plans of the settlement, and we sit with them in their public space. We use mapping as a tool to work in this process, and in this process we try to convince them that recovery is still possible after the earthquake. We use different tools for during mapping, and also we try to engage a different generation in the mapping process. From this process, we came out with different mapping different maps which has documented many information of the site. This is one of the map of the temple, and also we did the inventory and all the measurement of the monuments, so that municipality can work on the planning. And also we did the mapping of the traditional boundary. Only this much tracing was found, where in other places all the traces has been gone. But by talking with a community, we could trace exact path of the boundary. Then we worked with municipality and provide a technical drawing that in this stretch it is still possible to retain this traditional boundary. Together with this, we have also done the mapping of private houses, which from this we found that only 13% of traditional houses are remaining, which are still possible to recover and restore in its original form, which are mostly made from the natural materials like mud, wood, stone. And for the reconstruction, we also propose different guidelines and the template, so that they can maintain the original fabric of the settlement. This is one of the traditional facade of the settlement, which lies in the center of the Kirtipur, which has changed in this way. So we talked with the community how to regain the essence of this main stretch. So by now talking with community, we were just showing them how it is possible. They got so excited, and even the municipality was trying to give subsidies in the wood use of the wood, and also incentive to encourage people to go back to the original form. Together with this, we have also done mapping of water heritage, which is very important for any settlement, which where we have found many water heritage has lost its identity. And so in this process, municipality realize and many ponds are in process of recovery. With tangible, we have also tried to map intangible routes like festival routes and created these maps so that tourist or visitor can use all these maps to go around the settlement during the festive time as well. At the end, we propose this master plan, which we have prepared with the community, where which green pockets can be saved for community to enjoy, which street can be used as heritage street, and visitor as well as the community can utilize that space, which area has potential for commercial use, and for the visitor, which elements or which facilities are to be added. So in that way, we have developed this master plan for municipality together with the community. And we also provided technical support for the public structure which has already damaged in earthquake, and with the reference of images, and they are now coming back with the help of municipality. So this gives a sense of recovery to the community that we can still build back better. Together with this, now municipality has developed this Visit Kirtipur website, where all the maps and all the information are provided, so that it will be easy for the visitor to find all the maps and go around by themselves. And they have also developed their branding with Nepal Tourism Board, which has been referred from the traditional attire of female. And they have also developed community homestay. You can see this kind of template in many houses now in Kirtipur, where they have started a community homestay. The community nest has helped them to boost economy, not only of one person, but whole community. So at the end, we are trying to networking all the working settlement, because in isolation, sustainable tourism is very difficult to implement. So networking was one of our end goal to develop a sustainable tourism in all the settlements. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter DeBrine, and I'm a destination advisor and a UNESCO Sustainable Tourism Consultant. For the past 10 years, I coordinated the World Heritage and Sustainable Tourism Program at UNESCO. I am pleased to take part in the Climate Heritage Network Youth Dialogue. I would first like to begin my presentation by sharing the results of a recent UNESCO survey that highlights the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on tourism and World Heritage sites, as this will determine how tourism will rebound in the future. I will then briefly address the impacts of climate change, heritage, and tourism, and provide some key ideas on how we can work to ensure that the recovery provides resiliency and regeneration. And if you bear with me for one moment while I share my screen. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating impact on tourism in 2020. And for many destinations, 2021 will be another challenging year, as vaccination rollouts have been slower than expected and renewed waves of infection have taken hold in different parts of the world. The recent UNESCO survey found that many respondents expect the effects of the crisis on World Heritage properties to continue in the months, if not years to come. At the height of the crisis, it was reported that 90% of countries with World Heritage properties had closed or partially closed them, and respondents to the survey still reported an average figure of 71% closure of sites in February 2021. Visitors to World Heritage sites dropped by 66% in 2020, according to respondents, and at sites where staff redundancies were reported, an average of 40% of permanent staff and 53% of temporary staff were made redundant at those sites. Respondents overwhelmingly reported large impacts on local communities, especially from the loss of revenue due to huge reductions in visitors to World Heritage sites and grave concerns about the future. Some respondents recommended a recovery process that includes measures to support the tourism sector and communities and to safeguard livelihoods in the transition towards more versatile and resilient World Heritage site management. The uncertainty surrounding the current crisis has suggested a policy of realignment of properties towards domestic tourism for many stakeholders in the short term, providing, however, the equally important opportunity to build back better. Tourism and heritage are, of course, inextricably linked, and both are highly vulnerable to climate change. The tourism industry relies on coasts and other areas of natural beauty. It is becoming increasingly vulnerable to climate impacts like sea level rise, glacier melt, or extreme weather. Low-lying island nations are losing their beaches to sea level rise and their coral reefs to ocean warming. In the Himalayas, snow and glacier melt is making the mountains more hazardous and destroying the ecosystem's natural beauty. In the Caribbean, where tourism makes up to 20 to 30% of GDP in many countries, research by the World Travel and Tourism Council has found that the unusually strong 2017 Atlantic hurricane season cost the region over 800,000 visitors, who would have generated approximately 741 million US dollars. The storms triggered hikes in insurance premiums as well of up to 40%, increasing the key cost for the area's hotels. Capitalizing on the new services that tourism and business and creative industries have been providing to destinations in times of crisis brings an opportunity to create a stronger ties with local communities, to integrate local wisdom and enhance local satisfaction with tourism. Communities may need business mentorship for their local entrepreneurship ventures to improve their supply chain inclusion. Furthermore, stronger local value chains bring social and economic benefits to local communities, reduce its dependence on foreign suppliers while supporting the circularity of tourism operations. Nature-based solutions have a potential to drive innovation in tourism towards sustainability, and besides mitigating the environmental impacts of tourism activity, result in better management of scarce natural resources such as water, coral reefs, wetlands, mangroves, coastlines, and foster disaster resilience both in urban and natural environments. Investments in nature-based solutions also respond well to the expectations of a growing demand for experience in nature. Also enhancing mitigation efforts in the tourism sector, including through investments to develop low carbon transportation options and greener infrastructure, is key to resilience. It should also be seen as a competitive advantage, as the cost of inaction with regards to climate will be in the long run larger than the cost of any other crisis. Additionally, a growing number of consumers are demanding that the tourism sector takes responsibility for its CO2 emissions and would like to take part in these efforts. It's important to note that technical and financial support will be needed to accomplish such transition. By supporting the integration of a circular economy process in tourism can promote innovation and the creation of new sustainable business models, adding value for consumers and local economic development. The efficient use of energy and water are also essential measures. And by introducing a comprehensive place-based approach for tourism, we can develop tourism experiences based on the uniqueness of destinations across different fields, including cultural heritage, gastronomy, local cultural expressions, and better involve local creators, heritage practitioners, and inhabitants in the shaping of the tourism policies and practices. We should strive to develop a community-centered tourism initiatives that actively engage practitioners of local and traditional knowledge to strengthen systems for transmitting heritage to future generations through sustainable tourism, and exploring how heritage and tourism can improve the livelihoods of communities and practitioners while safeguarding the social functions and the cultural meanings of that heritage. And it's very important to underscore that managing tourism and heritage is complicated, but it will require new ways of working. One of the most important things is to engage with all the different stakeholders to promote a collective responsibility to changing things. This will be underpinned by the creation of effective governance and management models, and again, the developed shared values and responsibilities. I would like to share with you now some tools that UNESCO has developed to help in the management and promotion of destinations. In 2019, UNESCO and the Expedia Group launched a partnership focused on promoting sustainable tourism and heritage conservation through a sustainable travel pledge. The pledge takes an industry-first approach to environmental and cultural protection, requiring hotel operators to introduce firm measures to eliminate single-use plastics, for example, and promote local culture. The pilot phase of the project was launched in 2020 in Thailand in collaboration with the Tourism Authority of Thailand, with well over 600 hotels signing the pledge to date. The pledge is now expanding globally with the core hotel group signing on in March. A new global website will be unveiled in September. Efforts are also underway for a global expansion of the pledge. It is the first collaboration between UNESCO and a global online travel agency. Another tool is our how-to guides. These easily accessible guides are focused on the best practice approaches to sustainable economic development through tourism. The first of the kind, the how-to resources offer direction and guidance to managers of World Heritage tourism destinations and other stakeholders to help identify the most suitable solutions for circumstances in their local environments and aid in developing general know-how for the management of each destination. The how-to guides bring best practice knowledge to a full World Heritage community so that site managers, tourism professionals, conservation professionals, and communities around the world understand the possibilities of sustainable tourism and what key issues have already been achieved. These resources are a valuable asset to site managers in particular who often lack the tools and know-how to effectively manage and maximize tourism benefits while minimizing its negative impact. The series of guides have been structured as a step-by-step process for site managers. You can see here that there's some strategic foundations that we find fundamental to the how-to guides, which focuses on understanding tourism in the destination, developing a strategy for sustainable tourism, establishing effective governance structures, and engagement with the different stakeholders. Another tool is a visitor management assessment and strategy tool called the VMAST. It is specifically developed to help site management and destination authorities manage visitation and tourism for the protection of heritage values while contributing towards local sustainable development and adapted and resilient communities by creating a baseline for sustainable tourism according to a set of indicators. The tool will be available soon to all World Heritage Site managers. As you can see, my presentation highlights both the challenges and opportunities for heritage sites and communities that rely on tourism in the face of a changing climate. It underscores the need to ensure that when tourism rebounds, it spurs innovation and tests new approaches to support communities in their recovery and transform destinations away from outdated and unsustainable models and towards a more strategic approach for tourism that rejuvenates communities, protects heritage, harnesses cultural values, and protects against climate impacts. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
All right, thanks everyone. Thank you, Peter, for that presentation, to our other speakers as well. This brings us to the end of the first section of today's session. And I think in the past 1 hour, we've traveled across the continents. We've also looked at different kinds of heritage. We've talked about natural heritage, cultural heritage. We've also looked at the impact of intangible heritage and its correlation to climate change. And before we head on to the discussions in the breakout rooms, which will give us, I think, the space to also share local experiences of our own, I had a quick question for Peter from the morning session, and I thought we could perhaps talk about it here. So so everybody would have a chance to benefit from that. Peter, we have a question from Hilary Ducroix, and she's asking you, what is the relationship between the UNESCO Tourism Pledge that you spoke about and UNWTO's recent Glasgow Pledge? If there's something, if that, some light that you can shed on that, that'd be great.
Yes, I think that the as I said, the UNESCO Sustainable Travel Pledge was launched, well, it was actually conceived in 2019 and then launched as a pilot in Thailand. And so this actually came before the Glasgow pledge with UNWTO. But essentially, I think the goal is the same in the sense that we really want to catalyze more sustainable business practices within the tourism sector. And we really think a pledge is a good way to do that. We specifically designed the pledge with a low barrier of entry. So it's not prescriptive. So we're not encouraging to reduce single-use plastic, for instance, by 100% by 2025 or anything like that. So we really want to really focus on how we can get those small and medium-sized businesses to be doing engaging in more sustainable business practices in those destinations where they operate. I think the overall goals certainly are going to be the same, and working together is at the core of probably both the UNESCO pledge and the Glasgow pledge as well. So I hope that answers it, the question. But I think they were conceived and developed at different times.
Thank you, Peter. I think we also have a follow-up question from Sheridan. She's asking when VMAT will be available.
VMAT it's going to be a rolling basis that it's available. I think what we're going to be making an announcement, and there'll be a website where you can access the VMAT. Right now it's been tested in many World Heritage properties, and we've been taking the feedback that we received to make the tool even better. So I think what we'll be doing is sending out messages throughout the UNESCO system directly to site management authorities. So you'll be hearing from us probably towards the end of the year and into next year to get more sites to be signing up for that, to use that tool.
Thank you, Peter. All right, before we head on to our next session, which is going to be a 30-minute discussions in the breakout rooms, I also wanted to let everybody know that we will have some of the facilitators from our team, from the core organizing team, and it's perhaps a good time for me to give you a very quick introduction to them because the team's present today. We have Louise Kelly, who's been with me since the beginning of the session, who's been helping us with the videos. Louise is from Historical Environment Scotland. Louise, do you want to say a quick hello to everyone?
Hi, everyone. I'm not going to say too much because I think we need to move on, but hopefully we can have some really good discussions when we move into the breakout.
Indeed. Then we also have with us Yolo, who's joining us from Latin America. Yolo, if you could just very quickly say hello. Yolo is also coordinating an emerging professionals program for ICOMOS, and she's been our point of contact for a lot of our speakers today. So thank you, Yolo.
Hi, hello everyone. Thanks for being here.
And lastly, we have Reem with us. Reem is also a conservation architect from Algeria, and Reem's also going to be talking a lot more during our follow-up sessions on the other themes, particularly that one, the one on transformative change. But Reem, do you want to just step in and say a quick hello to everyone while you're here?
Hello everyone, welcome and happy World Heritage Tourism Day. And yeah, thank you for reminding people to join the session on transformative change.
Thank you, Reem. And of course, the person behind the event, we have Andrew Potts, who is part of the Climate Heritage Network Secretariat, and he's helped us. Hello, Andrew. All right, I think we can see you a little better now. Andrew's joining us today from Milan. Is that correct?
It is, for one.
Andrew's been traveling quite a bit to, I think, celebrate World Tourism Day in its true spirit. But all right, without further ado, Luis, I would let you put us into different breakout rooms. I'd just like to remind everybody that we'll have about a 30-minute session, and then we'll automatically be redirected into the main room. And during the session, please, try and come up with as many recommendations as you would have, for this particular theme around climate change and sustainable heritage tourism. And we'll try to gather all of them into our notes as we prepare the outcomes. All right, Louise, over to you now. I think we'll give everyone a couple of minutes to join back.
I think that's everyone for Valley.
All right, welcome back to the room, everyone. I've had a very interesting job kind of hopping between the two sessions, and I can tell you, like, in the morning session, it felt like we were all talking about the same topics, the same challenges, having the conversation take a same direction. And this session in the evening, we've had such radical approaches, and it's been so interesting because I was frantically trying to put down the notes from either of the groups. I know one of the groups was talking about, how to come about a talking about climate justice and how one could actually measure the carbon emissions and so on. And the other group with Luis, I know we started off with the discussion of, what would comprise of true traditional knowledge versus vernacular knowledge. And, we've gone on to some very fascinating discussions as well. So before I think we close the session, Luis, are there any final thoughts that you have that you might want to share?
Yeah, do you want me to share a few thoughts from that group and then someone from the other group can share a few thoughts, and then I'll give some general from the whole session?
Yes.
So yeah, just as you touched on there, so we had quite a few people that were in listening to the speakers and the Q&A, and then they obviously left. They had other things going on. So I was really lucky. I had a nice discussion with Marley at the start to get a bit more detail about her tree planting. So we were kind of sharing some challenges, because I haven't been doing tree planting, but some of my colleagues have. And I was sharing a nice memory that I had of when I was a child and I planted trees. Someone, it wasn't my project, someone else had it. And so hopefully children that have participated in Marley's project, in a few decades time, they'll have similar fond memories, how they've kind of participated in that. And I think that's really valuable. And from there, we kind of moved on to talking about local communities and storytelling and engaging local people. And but yeah, from there we really moved on to some quite different things about, as you say, traditional definitions of traditional and vernacular and how that might vary from place to place. And then just at the end, we were talking about data gathering. So from people that are participating in these kinds of projects, but also from tourists, and how we can maybe do a better job. I guess we didn't use this term, but I guess it would be kind of citizen science things. So tourists that are already going to places and engaging, how we can use them for data gathering. And I think, yeah, there is probably some quite interesting opportunities there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Luis. I know I remember the last few words that Richard was sharing with us, and also the example of Napoli, because I was there by Vesuvius yesterday, in fact, Richard. So I was very intrigued to hear about this, this practice from the local communities, where they're the ones who taught about not just, the science behind everything that they're trying to preserve. Peter, perhaps from the other group, would you like to share a few thoughts before we do a quick closing?
Sure. No, we had a great discussion, I think, on sort of, you talked about, Pravali, this idea of climate justice. And for me, it really brought, because I haven't given a lot of thought to that, but it really is very provocative in that sense to how we really do approach this. Because I mentioned, for instance, there's on the travel and tourism side, there's like the UNWTO says that travel is a human right and everybody should do it and be able to do it. But obviously there's a lot of barriers to that, and travel and tourism, use a lot of natural resources, often at the expense of the local communities. So you have people coming in from foreign lands, and there has to be some sort of a justice arrangement within that construct. And so in terms of climate, it just, I think, takes it to a whole nother level, especially in those destinations that are vulnerable to climate, and those, what we heard earlier about, the increased forest fires and the heat and the hot and the extreme weather. So I think it's something that's going to become more and more important. And then you juxtaposition that, as Andrew was saying, with World Heritage properties, and then it gets very interesting in terms of future investment in World Heritage properties, in terms of transportation decisions that are made, and also in terms of infrastructure. And unfortunately, we got pulled out of the breakout room while I was going to say something about infrastructure, because with World Heritage, it's what we see from the state of conservation reports, that usually when there's a problem with tourism, it's often related to infrastructure. And and it could be a hotel, it could be something else, but this is, I think, going to be a real issue for those heritage management authorities, because one of the trends, for instance, right now is to build visitor centers or information centers at World Heritage sites. So we're talking about adding more infrastructure to a lot of these places. And are they going to be fit for purpose? Are they going to be energy efficient? We have, how do you, the example of the castle in Edinburgh, how do you make that thing energy efficient? And you're not going to be retrofitting these places, because you can't, because the World Heritage Convention says you can't, you can't change things. Everything is kind of there. And we're having to, there was a big debate about having access to World Heritage properties for people with special needs. How do you put in ramps in some of these historic places that don't end up having that negative impact on the outstanding universal value? Because, as everybody knows, with World Heritage, it all comes back to that. And so we often say we're not talking about, you can't build these kind of things, but it's really going to be how and where they are in terms of their impact on the OUV, but obviously their impact on the climate. So this is something where, kind of getting back to the decision that Andrew had shared from the World Heritage Committee in their last session, where sites are going to have that accounting. They're going to have to start measuring their CO2 emissions, and how we do that to make it easy and practical is something I think that is going to be essential to be able to get that accurate information, so they can make those informed decisions. Because if there is ever a carbon tax or something, they're going to be left holding the bag in terms of those costs that are associated with it. So that's kind of where the discussions, we could have stayed there for another 2 hours probably discussing it.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm sure that we would all be staying here until the end of the night if we could. But since we've got to move on, Luis, would you like to wrap up, a little about today's discussions, and to see where our youth recommendations might be taking us after the first theme?
Yeah, so I was struck by a few things. So today's theme was sustainable tourism. And one thing that really struck me was that we didn't just talk about tourism, but everything that we did talk about is related to tourism, and how much actually that encompasses. And basically everything that happens at a heritage site, or even in a wider kind of space that has heritage, has an impact on tourism. And equally, tourism can have an opportunity to have a positive impact on those places as well. And another kind of two things that really ran through a lot of the discussions that we've had today, both from the speakers and also the various discussions, is that we've talked a lot about people, but also, even though I don't know if anyone said this word today, but this is something that came out to me, is we've talked about respect. And it's about respect for local communities. We've talked about, respecting different people's expertise and knowledge. So, we've obviously brought this group together so it can be a youth-led, and we can give more of a platform for that, but also knowing that other people have more experience than we have, and we need to listen to that, and it needs to be the dialogue between the two, or three, or whatever. And also that we've the kind of local community thing, and that kind of links back to what I was saying. It's all really about people. So even though in some ways we have obviously we've talked about buildings, or we've talked about locations, but it's really been the kind of people focus that's come through really strongly for me. So I know these aren't really kind of conclusions, it's more sort of things that come together, but hopefully with the various notes that we've taken, we'll be able to kind of pull these things together, and these are kind of things that will come through in the overall kind of recommendations that will draw at the end of these sessions. So before we kind of finish, I wanted to remind people that this is the first of 3 dialogues that we're going to have. That there's 2 more, one on Wednesday and then one next week, and both of those also have 2 sessions as well. So if you want to come along, or if you're less interested in those topics, that's fine, but please let other people that you know that they're happening. We'd love to have more people come along to those, and we're hoping that this is going to be an ongoing thing, that we're going to have a youth forum that's similarly going to have intergenerational discussions as well. So if you have thoughts on that, please get in touch and let us know how that should look. Otherwise, we'll send an email and ask for your input on that, and hopefully we can kind of shape that for next year and the coming years. Pravali, did you have anything else to add?
No, Louise, thank you. You summed it up pretty, pretty conclusively. But just wanted to say that on the 29th, the session's going to be talking about traditional knowledge and skills. And I know we already started the discussion today, so it's just going to, take on from that. And on the 4th of October, which is this coming Monday, we're going to be talking about transformative change. I'm looking at you, Reem, because I know you've been waiting to have this session. But with that, I think we're going to conclude the very first theme for our Climate Heritage Narrative Series. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in from different parts of the world, across time zones. And we're going to be in touch with you soon with all the outcomes that we have from these sessions. I wish everyone a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you.